Oh, you are dressed nice.
Oh, I'm wearing a collared shirt.
Yep.
I mean, it's a polo, but this is nice for us.
I got some polos, but I'm afraid to wear them because every time I don't have a shirt on like this, and I have a nicer shirt like that, people go, "Why are you so dressed up?"
This is a polo. This is less than casual Friday for most people, right? But if it's like you don't have the V-neck with like the tat showing, then it's like, whoa,
yeah.
What funeral are you going to?
I put on some khaki shorts the other day, and Kristen was like, "Where are you going?" Like, just because I put on a pair of like not running shorts.
I want to apologize to all people who have real jobs. Like, what are you talking about? We also we live in a generation which is generally more casual, right?
Sure.
Than like, I mean,
you say casual.
Generally
are in there.
Generally, it's more casserole. Like more casserole is better. Are you a casserole guy?
Mm-hmm. I'm from the South.
You're from the South. Like, you just throw a bunch of stuff in there, you call it a casserole.
That's right.
That was a bad word growing up. Like, it's like, hey, Mom, what's for dinner? Something casserole. I'm like, that just means whatever the crap that was left over in the fridge, all throw it together, put it in the oven. And it was just never good.
Bro, I don't know where it was that I saw this. It was some comedian talking about people in the South, like throwing mayonnaise and bacon and a whole bunch of other stuff on potatoes and then calling it a salad.
That's amazing.
This is who we are.
What's your favorite kind of salad? Potato.
Yeah, potato salad. Super healthy.
I actually don't like potato salad.
No.
This is actually why people, click on this podcast is for this sort of banter. No, really, it's just sort of insight. Watch everyday stuff.
We're going to transition, and we're only a minute 52 in, and we're going to get into the content right now.
Whoa.
This is another introduction week.
Whoa.
You feel thrown off, don't you?
No, this is what we do, man. Do you feel like we've been on this for a minute now, this topipic?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to hit the 700 something episodes that you said.
Which is good for everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
But quite a few, and we're on number 12.
It has been terrific. Not our banter. I mean, it's been solid, I guess, but the work of 248 has been really, really good.
248 did the good work.
Yes, and then you and I.
Yeah. Some people call it plagiarism. We call it efficiency.
Oh, did you see my computer almost fall?
I did.
Woo, that would have been bad.
Now we're at 2.5 minutes.
All right,
here we go. Number 12. Lead by example into the harvest. So just, again, not that maybe one person is clicking in and doesn't know we're in a series. So we are in a series working through this resource from 248 about these top 15 observations from urban disciple-making movements. And yeah, this one is lead by example into the harvest. So here is the potential strategy.
Let's say that one again. You just it's lead by example
into the harvest. Yeah.
Yep.
So potential strategy. Urban disciple-making leaders should continue to engage actively and go to the lost and broken themselves. They should not outsource the task of engaging the harvest to others, but rather lead and influence the movement to engage as a regular, disciplined life rhythm. You want to go first? You want me to tell you what I'm thinking?
I want to hear what you're thinking.
I thought you would. I was hoping for that.
Really?
Yeah.
In that case, I'll go first.
Okay.
No, I want you to go first.
When I first read this one, my immediate thought was a bit negative.
No way.
Do you think I'm like consistently operating from the negative?
Whoa, I guess this is getting personal. No, I think you have natural cynicism at times. Healthy.
I'll work on that.
No, healthy.
Okay.
Yeah. Good. You need that. Good.
My take on this was like, I feel like this is.
Need to work through this.
Yeah.
Okay, we can.
We'll have a moment.
Okay, we can do this, man. Okay.
My first take on this was I was thinking, okay, this is sort of a shot at what we came from. And historically, I think early on, this was some of the language we used of like, you can't just be a pastor doing the work. And, but then I thought, man, I just don't want to go there as much anymore. This has nothing to do with this podcast. I'm just going to verbally process.
Hey, I'm excited for this.
Are you ready for this?
I'm excited, yeah. And I have other thoughts that might be more consistent with what the podcast is talking about. So it's good.
I have some too, but so we just, we're maybe a month out from the microchurch conference.
Mm-hmm.
We got a bunch of feedback, no names, so I'm not like calling anybody out here. And it wasn't like a ton of feedback on this, but there were several that just sort of made me sad. Of things like, why did we host this in a mega church? I didn't feel like we needed all this stuff that looks like the old ways, like people singing from a stage or something else. And I was like, it was one of like, I feel like we've been sort of growing in like, how can we not create this divide between us, but how can we all be a bigger, better family together, collaborating in the city? And I thought, man, I want to make sure that when we do podcasts like this, where it feels like this isn't, I've made comments like this before where it's like, yeah, we need to be the ones making sure we go to the lost. Cause that's the problem with the old deal is like, you had people that just, you know, we did our holy huddle and we told other people to go tell their friends and bring them back here, but we didn't know any lost people. However, there is like a reality in that, that as we look at this one, we have to, I want to be careful not to just like throw stones and go like, well, this is the problem with the church and disciple making movements. We're all like out here. Cause I think at part of the potential strategy here and part of the comments within the 248 document is you got to tell your own story. And I would just say my own story was I didn't know lost people for a long time working within the church, but I want that to be more of a prophetic statement and not just all that was to say. I don't want to pick on the big church.
Yeah, that's good.
You like that?
No, I do. I mean,
now you're thinking, you're like looking up.
I'm looking and I was thinking, why is that one square a different color than the other squares? And then I was like, wait, Brian's talking. I need to pay attention. No, I think it's good. I think for, I was actually hanging with a church leader this week. He was actually used to be a missionary, a DMM guy, but also part of a large church here. And he was kind of pushing back on some of language that we have, even some of our training that he said kind of felt negative towards the, and I, wanted to really quickly take on a posture of apology, like humility and I don't actually think his example was negative, but I could see how it'd be portrayed that way. So if you're listening to this, maybe you're just like inside our own internal struggle right now of just trying to always do something. We're trying to do something new, without crapping on the old. And that's just a hard thing. Can I say that? Is that going to make it real?
I hope so.
I hope it doesn't. That being said, like, I think this whole idea of leaders need to lead into the harvest in like movement ways speaks just as much to any leaders within a full movement paradigm than it does, but yes, totally. Like that is the story, and not even to throw shade at pastors and leaders. It's just, we get so consumed, and I say we because we also used to be in that world, man. You get so consumed with different tasks that we tend to just not even know. Very many people don't know Jesus, like, let alone like living intentionally on mission. And I think so for the ordinary human, it's the exact same thing.
I was about to say
like,
that
we're so churched in the ways of our everyday life that it's, man, like we don't even know people like that. Yeah. That's the starting point.
The danger even in this microchurch paradigm, pursuing the smaller way, is that as we develop disciples and see a spiritual family emerge, that it stops.
Exactly.
And that we turn inward. And I think in that is like, I want to develop and help mature what has happened. I want to cultivate the spiritual journey of those that have made some decision, that have identified as part of this family. Like mentally, we make a shift to development. And we lose the outward focus of like meeting new people and engaging new contexts, or engaging new people even within our context. So to me, it's like, I love the observation, because it's like the network leader, you can't just be thinking, develop just leaders who are going to do the work. And the ordinary person, like, we have to guard against not just turning inward as soon as we see some fruit that happens, but to continue to ride that balance of like development and pioneering work, development, pioneering work.
Totally. Yeah. Going from the angle of the ordinary person, let's do that for a while. And then maybe go the angle of more of a network leader. Ordinary person, totally what you were just saying, right? Even as you see fruit come in your world, living on mission in the place that God has you. Yeah. It is easy to then want to just focus on depth or information or whatever it is and lose sight of reproducibility, multiplication, sending out from that, so that's true. That's huge. Also, it's a starting point conversation. So for most of the time in underground, what we have done well is mobilizing people who are already somewhere, already have some relationships. What we haven't done intentionally, and we've talked about this many times, is have a ton of just micro church settings that we're going to invite people into already. Not that we think that's bad, but it's just we're going to lean towards something. We're going to lean towards mobilizing those who need it. But more and more, we're like seeing people who also, in the meantime, as they're living out the missionary pathway, as they're trying to make disciples and they're out there and they're doing the thing that they need some healthy spiritual family in their own life. And there's that wilderness season. In the wilderness season, it is so easy to forget that you're in the wilderness and just fall in love with the wilderness because you're with your family in the wilderness. It's nice camping, right? Like it's just, that's the reality. We want to be with our brothers and sisters, our family. We get comfortable. We want community. It's like the biggest thing that a lonely, isolated culture wants is we want to belong with one another. We want to be known. And now we have that. And you kind of I want to stay here. I don't want to. So as a starting point for the ordinary person, if our call is to go make disciples, we need to figure out that balance. In your life personally, you need to figure out that rhythm of how can I do both? How can I be rooted and known, but also be sent and intentional? And there's not a one size fits all for that, but it is such a huge part of this conversation is that you got to continually to look where God is working out in the harvest fields.
Yeah, so in the 248 document, this is another helpful phrase. It's reading straight from it. Some say that when any leader gets caught up in the other aspects of disciple making and loses focus on sharing the gospel, engaging with the cities lost and broken, and praying, eventually the whole thing slows down. So many have shared an ongoing struggle to actively avoid being consumed by inward-focused Christian communities and teach their disciples to do the same. Many have shared to actively avoid being consumed by. Okay, got it. This intentional commitment to engage with the lost appears to become a community-held value. Momentum for a movement, one practitioner states, is found among the lost. I think a little bit of what you're saying that I would highlight just from this is that it's a community-held value. Mm-hmm. I think that is one of the things we talk about leaning one way or the other. Oftentimes, historically, in my church experience, we would hear conversations about is this place for the lost or is it for Christians? And it's when they're coming in, it's about formation, engaging. And then there was a movement, right, of churches that were no, we just want to be a place when lost people come, they hear the gospel. And then there's this balance of we want to be a place where lost people come and we send out Christians. And for us, we're trying to the community held value that we want to hold is mobilizing believers in those spaces. I think that's so good to go, man. That's our value, is to find believers that want to engage the lost and continue to do that. But to do so, I think this is the phrase I want to say that I think we've said often is you got to be telling your own story, and they need to be fresh. One of the things that we try to do on the podcast, because we've made some mistakes in the past, is to tell too fresh of a story. Totally. And then those people hear that story and go, yep, suddenly I don't feel so loved. I feel like you're a project. Yep. So we try not to tell super fresh stories on here because nobody wants to, we don't want to exploit people. And we try to tell some older stories. But in spaces where it's not recorded, if I'm just hanging with somebody and I keep hearing the same story over and over, it's that's a place I want people coaching me on too. What is the new stuff that you're telling from your context? Who are the new names that are on your Blessed Five list? Who are the, how have like new people become acquaintances and acquaintances become friends and friends become family? So I think we do a decent job with holding the value up. I think we have to continue to focus on the tools to help people go like, okay, you've made the movement here, but like, who are the new people sort of entering into your relational world?
So good. Okay. So that's ordinary person. That's good. Ordinary, remember, compliment in our world, just meaning non-professional paid Christians. I think a lot of people who listen to this podcast are also leaders, network leaders, both in the city, but a lot of outside the city. This conversation, I think, is super applicable because I think one of it is a lot of us might come out of leadership and the other model of church that we were talking about before, that we tend to just be caught up in a lot of the activity. Also, though, even as we're discipling people and we're raising up leaders in this form of church and disciple making that kind of goes outward, it is the same thing, though. Like, we can so easily schedule only with other believers our time, our effort, where we're around. And in some ways, I don't know, it's just as easy. I think it's just as easy. And we talk about a lot, really practically. KC Underground World, we've got these things we call hubs. Hubs are, basically condensed forms of the missions organization that are more contextual to a place or a people group, right, in the city. So we got, 11 hubs in the city right now. And I always tell hub leaders as we're helping develop them and form teams, I say, okay, you will live in a dual world. Like, you are going to need to pave the way and live on mission in the context that God has called you, right? You have to. You have your own stories. You need to live in that world. You also need to live in the world. Sorry, I got two hands. You need to live in the world over here where you are developing, releasing disciples. You're training up others, and you're creating a culture that everyone's doing that. That's just what you do. So you got to do both, and it's hard. And you need to figure out your time with it, because if you start to lean way too on one side,
I got a tool.
It's going to mess. Oh, really?
Yeah, it just came up yesterday in a conversation coaching a leader, actually. Let me hit one other point, and then we can come back to the tool. I think that, like, a practical way to help anybody, I think. The second point that they make on this appears to be a fruitful practice is staying in the harvest keeps us fresh, sharp, and quote unquote radical. Without seeing God's power, followers of Jesus can grow cold in their faith and lose focus on God and the gospel. Two things come to mind with this. One is I love this idea that, like, when you're engaging the lost and you're seeing signs and wonders and you're seeing prayers answered, like, that is inspirational to your faith.
Totally.
And it's like, I want to keep doing this because I want to continue to see the power of God released in my life and in others' lives. The other thing that was hitting me is this: staying in the harvest keeps us fresh, sharp, and radical. And thinking about, like, we think about tools all the time. I just did. I'm going to bring it up in a minute. But if we're not continually engaged in the culture with these tools, the tools can become old because they don't make sense in the culture anymore.
100%. Yep.
And we're going like, I don't think this thing's working. We need to iterate. But if we just keep assuming I've got this bag of tools and I'll just keep throwing them at people, it's like, these don't work anymore. Why do you keep handing these to me? So it keeps us fresh, sharp, and radical to say, like, is the current toolkit we have meaningful in today's culture? What's shifted? What else do we need?
Yeah.
What thoughts come to your mind?
Yeah, I think most of the tools that we have created have become out of unbelievable practical conversations, right? Yeah. Like, I remember when we created the context map. Remember, like, there's so many ways of doing this in different, movement trainings and stuff like that, of identifying where you're at, who are the people that God's work. We were like, it was so funny. I was like, well, really, it makes more sense to think context than it does just think random people that we know. So what if we just draw 3 circles and these are your 3 contexts and who are the people in it? And we're like, yeah, that's context map. It came out of, like, conversations where, like, we're training people to really look toward where do you spend your time or could potentially spend your time. But yeah, man, like, everything we've created have come out of need. It's a tool is really helping point to a greater or a larger conversation, right? Like a pillar of that we're trying to be about. A tool is just helping us do that, So you're exactly right. Keeping us fresh, keeping us real comes from actual mission on the ground, being around people who are doing it, living it out amongst yourselves. It's really hard to talk about how to have spiritual conversations with people. If you never have spiritual conversations with people, you have to tell stories from 5 years ago or other people's stories.
Yeah.
And it just gets old after a while. And like we get stuck in that stuff, and it's 100%. I mean, having a pulse or like just an understanding of how people think, what their attitudes are, what their opinions are of people who are non-churched. Like, oh man, that is one of the biggest things that believers are horrible at. We're so separated from the world, and we have all these, and then you become enemies instead of loving the very people that God has called us to.
Good, man. Yeah.
It's like, you got to spend, like, outside of any of all this, if you're not in the quote unquote harvest, as what, that just comes from the idea, like Luke 10 type of idea that Jesus sending, or Matthew 10, right? Where it's like, the harvest is plentiful, the workers are few. Like, the work in the harvest is out there. Like, you're to work the fields. That's the analogy that is given. So when we say the harvest, that's weird. That's what we're talking about. The fields of regular people out there. It's like, if we're not doing that, man, we quickly become completely clueless on just the way that people think.
So one of the, I don't want to like make ranks here, but like one of the students in 0 Hour, we've told this story. Corey has told it, and I guess Creighton himself has told it. Like you brought up the context map, right?
I'm gonna laugh because I thought you were trying to not say his name.
Oh, then I said it.
Yeah, trying to be really anonymous. No. But Creighton,
he's been on the podcast.
Yes, he has.
And so Creighton's story was, Corey invited him to fill out that context map tool, essentially to say, where are you in the harvest? And Creighton was like, I don't know anybody that doesn't know Jesus. And so he intentionally chose to leave his private school and enroll in a public school. His story was like, I'm going to go be with people that don't know Jesus.
Which is so crazy, man.
Yeah.
So good.
Such a beautiful story.
Yeah.
So I framed that up because you brought up the tool of the context map, and I sparked that. Early on in the story of the underground, before the underground, where we were training Christians within a predominant model church to be good missionaries, one of the tools that Hugh Halter kind of created, drew circles on a board and helped us, like, how do you help people go meet people that don't know Jesus? This was the tool I was thinking of. He just called it Leaders and Lost. So who are the people that want most of your time?
Christians.
The people in the middle. Is what he was saying. Like, again, we're training people that, like, they have belief in Jesus, but because of maybe the model or the paradigm they're in, it was the inward focused. And he was saying, like, in all of my time in the church world, the people that want most of my time are the people that are not leaders trying to reproduce in the harvest, nor are they just lost people. There are people in the middle that are like, hey, can we grab coffee? For what? Which is Hugh's sort of posture in life. It's like, it's like, I just want to hang with you. And he's like, after a while, I realized I'm not spending time with people that want to reproduce. This goes back to what you were saying a minute ago, where it's like thinking of a hub leader and how they train. You got to tell your own story, and you got to help other people tell their story. I'm spending time with the people in the middle that don't really want to go do the work. And because of all the time I'm spending with those people, my schedule is too full to go spend with people that just don't even know yet. And he just said, I had this realization, the two people that I really want to spend time with are people that don't yet know how much they matter to Jesus, and the people that want to go be with those people.
That's exactly right.
And so the tool that he was kind of coaching in is, that's the tool of Leaders and Lost, but this is how we would coach around it, is like, spend 2 weeks just analyzing your schedule. Do hour blocks. You can easily fill in like 9 to 5, I'm at work. But like, think about when you're there, what are you doing? Are you having lunch with people? Are you getting to know their story? Or just being at work? So spend 2 weeks at looking at that. And then kind of go through and circle, what are all the places I'm not spending time with Leaders and Lost? Not just at work, but like your full day. Like 5 o'clock, It's over. You got this 4 or 5 hours before you go to bed. Like, what are you doing? Right. And so once you've kind of done that, you've kind of circled and highlighted, what are the places that you could cut out that's like a drain on your time? And then begin to reorder your schedule to go, you know, just think percentages. How much time can I spend with leaders that want to go do this thing? And then where are the blocks where I'm spending time with people that just don't yet know? It was like that's a simple tool. So it doesn't take long to explain.
Super helpful.
But
church leaders in particular, super helpful. Yeah, our network leaders. What
it does is help you go, like when people, it helps you say no to things, essentially. When people go, hey, can we grab coffee? You go like, well, what is it that you like to talk about? And Hugh's pretty direct like that. I would sort of soften that. You're like, my marriage is struggling. I just want to get some advice. And he go, if they're not in the leader or lost category, I'd go, you know, I'm not really great at marriage counseling, but I do know somebody I'd like to like refer you to them. And like he had all these like simple ways to go, if they're the category and this sounds sort of
definitely not a shepherd's
right
viewpoint, which is fine.
Right. But all of the kind of middle ground conversations that he didn't feel like on that backside of this, it's going to help them reproduce somewhere, or it's going to help me know this person better and invite them deeper in my life. He just kind of pushed them off to people that he thought might help them.
Yeah.
And it opened up his schedule in some big ways. And I thought, man, that's such a great tool for all of us that are thinking like, where am I spending most of my time?
It's really good.
And I don't want to categorize people. I don't like doing that, saying you're a leader and you're not.
You're in the middle.
Yeah.
No, that is really helpful if you're a leader trying to think your time. That's so helpful. Like, I think one of the biggest reasons, like, just in all practicality, is that, yeah, our time can be sucked in so easily, and we just need to create that framework. You know, I was talking to a friend recently, pastoral leader who's leaning towards more things like that we do, and was part of the church culture that, you know, you need to be in the office from this time to this time. And it was just squeezing the life out of this person for so many ways. So part of it is like, we're going the opposite of that, and we're structuring our time to say, I will not be doing all of these things over here so that I can hang with people. And what's a very real challenge is you have to hang with people when they can hang.
Yep.
So that means weekends. That means evenings. If you have kids, you're figuring out how to have that involved, like your kids being a part of that. You're like, that's the stuff that's why this is not just okay, go do this and you're set. Like, what does it look like for you to spend time in the harvest that God has put in front of you?
That's
right. Like that. Yeah. And so your time needs to revolve around that harvest field, not just generally speaking, I've got this hour that I go to this apartment complex and I knock on doors and tell people about Jesus. Like, cool. But like, probably most of those people are at work right now anyway. Yeah. So you're like, what does it actually look
you're
like?
Safe and not actually engaged.
Like, exactly. So just like being strategic, but just being like, you have to protect so much of our conversations here are about our own schedules. We've got to like be wise with it. We've got to like cut things out. We got to like open space so that we can be with people. And that takes time. And I'm challenging this all the time, man, because like the reality is we got a lot going on, like everyone in our culture. But you know, we're building things. And as we build things, it just takes time. And I'm part of how God has wired me is I love starting things. I love connecting dots in the city. I love just out there, just exploring all the time. Right. So I'm hanging out with Christians and Christian leaders a lot too. But man, I want to just hang with like now that we got like some really cool stuff happening in our world, like I want to do that more and more. And I feel always challenged to do all these other things. So it's like very personal. This conversation is very personal, but man, we've got to fight for it. We have to fight for it.
Does it seem silly? Like that we have to tell people you should hang out with people that don't yet know?
Yeah, I mean, in the context of we're trying to see movement among people who don't yet know Jesus, yeah, it is maybe step one. You pray radically, and you actually have to be with people.
Yeah,
spend time with people who don't know Jesus.
It does kind of seem silly and like, well, duh, but it is like, again, to go back to the beginning of this conversation. It is something that we have to highlight because it is so easy for us, for the gravity to pull us back and go,
yeah,
I wouldn't even discount that you need those spaces.
Totally.
You need to be with
100%.
other followers of Jesus. I think the observation here is not don't be with Christians and don't just do your gatherings with Christians. It's how are you intentionally scheduling time in your life, in your context, with new people that don't yet know how much they matter to Jesus. And that hasn't always been emphasized. Like we've created insular cultures, and we're going to create bigger families. We got to make the space to do this.
Could I end with an example and an advertisement?
Let's go.
Okay. Get ready for this. Are you between the ages of 20 and 30? No. Okay. So, I've been hanging out with young adult, like recent college graduates, trying to, like, we have a bunch of young people scattered throughout the city, but we've never, at least in the underground network, had something that we're targeting, quote unquote, like living intentionally towards, that's a horrible word, I know. Living intentionally as far as like, hey, this people group, young adults, which is a ginormous people group of, how do we both mobilize and see disciple making happen among young adults? It's just increasingly very post-Christian context, right? So the tension that we have so often, just like any other church circles, is if we want to mobilize people, we tend to gather Christians. Well, what happens when we gather those Christians? We say it's missional, or whatever word we make up in the per decade, but missional was the word that I used a lot, right? 20 years ago, 15 years ago, we still say, like, if you want to be missional, well, this is a missional group. This is a missional community. This is a group that's going to be all about mission. But in the end, we just love each other, and we ain't going to live on mission because now we've got all the friends that we were longing for, right? And
I found my belonging.
Yeah. And we
don't mess it up.
We don't get outside. And I get it. Like, I'm not even saying that's like the worst thing in the world. It's just the reality. If you are a Christian leader who has tried to mobilize believers to be on mission, you know exactly what I'm talking about, that tension. A couple years ago, I was talking with Corey McElvain, because when two Corys get together, it's just mind-boggling brilliance. All right? So two Corys get together.
I'm going to change my name.
Yeah, dude, that would be crazy.
I'm not changing my name.
Imagine what this podcast could be called. And then we have Corey McElvain come as a guest and just be like...
regular contributor.
Yeah, regular contributor. So you get a lot of apostolic Corey-ness happening together.
Advertise.
And Corey was talking about this idea of like, well, what if we just had like it's 6 months and then it's over? At least in terms of like the official program. So this is that's the example of like, okay, maybe we try something like this where we have a 6-month intentional community. And we're going to mobilize young adults. We're actually hoping somewhere between 25, 30 people are in their 20s who are in Kansas City. And it's like a really intentional 6-month community. We're going to have meals together every week. We're going to have mentoring like older adults that are a part of this community, a place of belonging. But like there's some deep training in identity, in gifts and passions, in our own story, in the missionary pathway. What does it look like to make disciples? How to pray like Jesus, right? And praying in our own spiritual authority in a place of belonging. How to walk in healing, and have soul care. So we kind of created like a 6-month best of KC Underground stuff that we do with young adults. So here is the pitch. And we don't do a lot of pitches on this. If you happen to be in Kansas City and you're in your 20s, or you know someone who that might be something they're looking for, like how to go make disciples, but do this in a community of young adults for a 6-month thing. We're starting in September of 2024. Go to kcunderground.org/awaken. kcunderground.org/awaken to get more information. So there you go. Look at that plug.
Woo! That was really well done.
Thanks, man.
I mean, eventually.
Yeah, I got there. Yeah, I got there. I was thrown off by all the Corys. Such wisdom.
Is there anything else that
Are you serious about potentially changing your name to Corey?
No.
That'd be so confusing and so amazing.
I love my name.
Anyway, Corey signing out.
Later.
Corey?